Are you ready? Here we go. This is going to be good. We're talking about the real reason God created humanity. So last week we talked about the archons. And if you weren't here last week, the archons are dark, shadowy beings that have the power to create. And the chief archon, the head archon, is called Yaldabaoth. And Yaldabaoth is essentially who the Christians worship, according to Gnostics, the contemporary, who they would consider the contemporary Christians to worship. So Yaldabaoth, the chief archon, is a shadowy being called the dim ruler. Why is it called the dim ruler? Because it is a being of darkness, however, contains some power of light within itself. Because its mother, Sophia, a powerful being called an aeon, created this being accidentally. And so this being retained some of this power from its mother. It's called the dim ruler because it's this mix of shadow and light, but ultimately a dark being, but has this. The power of light represents its creative power, its ability to create. And so it generated archons. And we took a look at the contrasting differences between Valentinian Gnosticism and Sethian Gnosticism. Sethian Gnosticism looks at Yaldabaoth and the archons as being totally evil, completely malicious, here to trap humanity. We're going to explore exactly why in just a minute. Valentinian Gnosticism is a little different. They look at Yaldabaoth and the archons as being dark beings that have a lust for power and are constantly trying to dominate each other. However, the being from the higher realm, known as the Logos, decided that they could be useful in ordering the world because they had this lust for power. So they used these beings to create a hierarchy and order and structure in the material realm. So a little bit different depending on which version of Gnosticism you're looking at. But we're going to be taking a look here first at the secret book of John, which describes the creation of humanity. And we're going to be understanding the truth about what humanity is. But the main thing to understand here is that according to Sethian Gnosticism, the reason why that God created humanity in the form of bodies essentially is because what humans actually aren't bodies, but are beings of divine light, and thus are more powerful than the Creator God. See, the Creator God isn't a being of light. The Creator God is a being of darkness that contains some of the light that it retained from its mother when it was created. So it's a being of darkness. It's not a being of light. It cannot even enter the domains of light, the realms of light. Humans, on the other hand, not human bodies, but the true spiritual human, is a being of divine light and is thus ultimately more powerful than Yaldabaoth, the Creator God. And of course, this is not something that Yaldabaoth likes very much, and so starts to create a plan to trap and enslave humanity. So we're going to be taking a look at that and then answering the question, what does that have to do with us? What is the truth about humanity? What does that have to do with our life today? And what can we learn from this? What can we understand from this as we navigate the world? Are we really tied to this material world? Are our bodies actually prisons? Are we trapped in the cycle of reincarnation? Because they believe in reincarnation as well, by the way. When you die, your soul is not released. You get bound to the material world by various archons, and depending on what version of Gnosticism, an archon will reinsert you into another body. So you're trapped in the cycle of reincarnation. But let's just jump right into it. So this is... Let me move this over here, actually. So we are going to start, let's start by taking a look at the secret book of John. And by the way, all of this that I'm reading here today is available to read for free on gnosis.org. That's gnosis.org, gnosis.org. Great website, highly recommend it. They have all the Nag Hammadi, all the Gnostic texts found in the Nag Hammadi are available to read for free on their website. So check that out if you want to read it for yourself. So, let's see. We talked about before how the archons were created. by Yaldabaoth, how Yaldabaoth created these archons. And remember, these archons represent dark aspects of the mind, such as wrath, or jealousy, or anger, or ignorance, etc. And these dark forces are dark aspects that bind humanity to the world. And as we saw in the Gospel of Mary, the teaching is that to transcend the material realm, one must defeat these archons, which can be interpreted as overcoming these aspects that exist within yourself, these aspects that must be overcome when you're looking at things like ego and ignorance and wrath and hatred, etc. But before we get into that, let's talk about humanity. Because this right here, what we're going to look at right now, is titled Humanity Begins. And it says, so at the point, by the way, we're at right now, is that the only thing that exists is we have the perfect eonic realms of divine light, the pleroma, the fullness, the entirety, the totality. We have the divine realm of light, and then we have the shadowy realms ruled by the dark entities, the archons. And it says, humanity begins. It says, then came a voice from the highest realms saying, the man exists and the son of man. Yaldabaoth, the chief ruler or chief archon, remember this is the creator god of the Bible, heard it. He heard this voice, and he thought that it came from his mother. He thought that this came from Sophia, the eon of wisdom that generated it. He did not know the true source of the voice, the Holy Mother Father, the perfect providence, image of the invisible, the Father of everything, in whom everything has come to be. So this voice came from the perfect realms and was originating from the One, the great invisible spirit, the Holy Mother Father. But Yaldabaoth isn't even really aware. See, Yaldabaoth is also known as Samael, the blind god. So in a lot of these Gnostic stories, Yaldabaoth isn't really aware of these higher realms or what goes on in them, or the true God, the One, the true God of divine light, the One. It depends on what version of Gnosticism that you're looking at. In some version, he doesn't know. In other versions, he does. In Valentinian Gnosticism, it's very interesting because you're going to see Yaldabaoth isn't necessarily looked at as being evil, but more so ignorant, more so like almost kind of like a bratty child or like a rebellious teenager or something like that. And this is why in Valentinian Gnosticism, the archons are used as ordering forces. But ultimately, it says in Valentinian Gnosticism that the chief ruler should or needs to come to knowledge and understanding of the One. So it's a lot different. Valentinian Gnosticism is not so black and white. It's a lot more nuanced in that way. But we're not looking at Valentinian Gnosticism right now. We're looking at Sethian Gnosticism, where Yaldabaoth is just downright evil, being of darkness, shadow, etc. He hears this voice that says, the man exists and the son of man. And it says, the first man, this is the one who appeared to them, he appeared in the form of a human being, and all of the realms of the chief ruler quaked, and the foundations of the abyss moved. So when the man, and remember, this isn't a physical form, right? This isn't a being of matter. This is a spiritual being. So this spiritual human appeared, and all of the realms of the chief ruler, all of the realms of the creator God quaked. The foundations of the abyss moved. He illuminated the waters above the world of matter, and his image shone in those waters. So there's this idea of spirituality or spiritual realms being associated with water. And so you'll find this, sometimes in Bible stories or whatever, this idea of water over the earth, but it's this idea of a spiritual realm. And so basically it's saying he illuminated the waters above the world of matter, meaning he illuminated sort of that spiritual realm that exists apart from the material realm, or not within the material realm, and his image shone in those waters. And all the demons and the first ruler together gazed up towards the underside of the newly shining waters. So this is a spiritual realm, a metaphysical realm, a realm that is beyond the domain of matter, and this is where the image of the human appeared. So you can imagine this image of the human appeared, all the realms of the rulers quaked, the abyss was moved, and they all, the chief ruler, they're all looking up, symbolizing the fact that it is higher than them, it is beyond their realm, and they are gazing up and seeing this image of the human. It says all the demons and the first, they're considered demons, by the way, these archons, these rulers. So the God of the Bible is considered a demon, or even Satan. So all of the demons and the first ruler together looked up toward the underside of the newly shining waters, and through that light they saw the image in the waters, the image of this human. So here's what's happening. Well, here, let me read a little more. Yaldabaoth said to his subordinate demons, "Let's create a man according to the image of God and our own likeness, so that his image will illuminate us." So basically what they're doing here, okay, according to the Secret Book of John, is basically they want to create their own version of a human or a man. They want to create their own version, okay? So they did not create the spiritual human. They are wanting to create their own version that is in their likeness. And what is their likeness? Their likeness has to do with darkness and shadow and matter, a material version. So they want to create a material version of this being, a copy of this being out of matter. Okay, so it says, all right, let me skip real quick over to another Gnostic text called "On the Image, on the Origin of the World." Okay, because I want to get in. We're going to get into now how these archons begin to create humanity. But before we do, I want to read to you another, and you guys heard me read this before, but for those who aren't familiar with it, and "On the Origin of the World," it describes something very, very similar. Right? It says, there is a being called Atom of Light. All right. So according to "On the Origin of the World," there is this first human, and again, it's a spiritual human, and in this version, it's called Atom of Light. In some versions, it's called Adamas, but the Atom of Light. And it says, the Atom of Light created a great eternal realm for himself. In that eternal realm, he created 6 worlds and 6 realms, which are 7 times better than the heavens of chaos and their worlds. All right, so that's important to understand, that this being, according to this version of the story, this being of light, this first human, the Atom of Light, created its own heavens and its own realms that were 7 times better than the realms created by God and the archons. And it says, before Atom of Light withdrew in the chaos, the authorities saw him. So just like in the Secret Book of John, the archons saw this being. And they laughed at the chief creator. In other words, all the demons, all the archons laughed at the creator God, because he lied, saying, "I am God and there is no other God but me." So you notice God says that, if you read the Bible, God says that a few times. I am the only God, I am the one true God, there is no other God but me. So when the archons saw this human, this spiritual human, create realms 7 times better than theirs, they laughed at the the God of the Bible, the chief creator God, because they're like, you lied to us. You said there was no other God but you. And it says, when they came to him, they said, is this not the God who ruined our work? So you see right away, they're associating humans, or this human at least, with being God, and more powerful than the chief ruler, more powerful than Yaldabaoth, so much so that the other beings are laughing at him, going like, you said you're the only God. Clearly, there's another. So the chief ruler answered them, and he said, yes, but if you wish that he not be able to ruin our work, come, let's create a human being from the earth according to the image of our body and according to the likeness of this being to serve us. So whenever this being sees his likeness, he may become enamored of it. Then he will no longer ruin our work, but we shall make those who are born from the light our servants through all the time of this age. So you'll notice, right, these stories, there's some discrepancies, there's some differences, but the ultimate idea here is the same, that there is a spiritual human that is vastly superior to these dark beings. And in this version, and on the origin of the world, they want to create a human in their own likeness to be able to enslave and trap the beings of light, so that they, the beings of light, will become their servants. Because the beings of light are more powerful. As you can see, they're more powerful than Yaldabaoth and his dark army. And so they essentially want to try and trick and trap these beings. So going back to the secret book of John, very similar. Let's create a being in our image, in our likeness, and so that we can get some of that power. That's kind of what their idea is. They want to create, because their whole, see, they're creators. These beings have the power of creation. And so when it says like they saw the image of the man in the waters, this is sort of the idea of they're seeing that blueprint, and they're going to try and create their own human, but it's going to be a copied version. Now, take a look at this. This is very important to understand and ties in directly with what we talked about last week, where we talked about how the archons represent different faculties of the mind, or different aspects of the mind that tie humanity to the material world, like wrath and ignorance, etc. So, here's the deal. Yaldabaoth and his archons, they're freaked out because of this being of light that is creating realms more powerful than theirs, or having their realms quake and shake. And so they're going to create their own human in their own likeness. Now, it says each one through another's power created aspects of the man. So they're now going to create a human being. And each one of these archons created a different aspect. And remember, these different archons represent different faculties, like we were talking about. Each added a characteristic corresponding to the psychic factors they had seen in the image above them. So what does psychic mean? Psychic here means, like in the terms of psyche, mind. Psychic doesn't mean paranormal activity or something like that. It just has to do with the psyche. Psychic means having to do with the psyche. So each of these beings added a characteristic according to the psychic factors or mental factors they had seen in the image above them. They made a creature of substance in the likeness of that perfect first man. And they said, let us call him Adam, so that his name will give us the power of light. So each one of these archons are going to be involved in the creation of this being, modeling it on the image that they saw above, but also according to their own likeness. Now, this is very interesting here. It talks about the construction of the human body. But listen to this. It says the 7 powers began to work. And the 7 powers are these 7 archons. And each one of these archons do have a positive aspect. And so they operate in sort of in pairs. So we have goodness and providence, divinity, lordship, kingdom, zeal, and understanding. But listen to this. So there's a lot to this, but as a quick overview, it says goodness made a psyche of bone. Providence made a psyche of sinew. Divinity made a psyche of flesh. Lordship made a psyche of marrow. Kingdom made a psyche of blood. Zeal made a psyche of skin. Understanding made a psyche of hair. So this is what's really interesting about this, is that even though they're talking about bone and sinew and flesh and marrow and blood and skin and hair, as you'll see later, they're going to make the material body. They haven't made the material body yet. So this is almost like a psychic body or a mental body that they're creating here. They're creating a mental psychic construct or pattern. This isn't even material yet. And so it says the host of demons took these substances from the powers to create the limbs and the body itself. And they put the parts together and coordinated them. But remember, this is still not really material yet. Even though we're talking about body parts, it's more like the pattern, the construction, the blueprint, the idea of this. Now, there is a long list, a very, very long here. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. It's not very long, but it's long, of the different demonic names and which demons created which part. So, for example, it says the first one began by making the head. Abron created his head. Meginstroeth created the brain. Asterechme, the right eye. Thasposmocha, the left eye. Irenaeus, the right eye. Bisoum, the left ear. And on and on. It takes the eye, the ears, the nose. It gets into very, very, very detailed, all the different parts of the body. But the reason why this is sort of important to understand is that according to Sethian Gnosticism, humanity really is this constructed being constructed of demonic forces. So in essence, for Sethian Gnostics, the body is something dark and evil. It is a demonic construct. So it very much is a prison and is extremely negative. According to Sethian Gnosticism, the human body is a prison, a demonic construct. Every aspect of it, every essence of it is constructed by the demonic archonic forces. And they go into very specific detail about the construction of this body. But that's what's important to understand when it comes to Sethian Gnosticism. Material world, absolute evil, absolute darkness. The body, absolute evil, constructed, a demonic construct. Let's see. It goes on and on and on about the constructions of the womb and the genitals and the left breast and the right hand and the right eye and the toes, etc. And it says 7 govern the whole body. Now this is important. Take a look at this. So 7 of them govern the whole body. Michael, Uriel, Asmendas, Saphastoel are Moriam, Richram, and Emiorphos. Now, or Emiorps. Now, right, fine, whatever. Doesn't really matter. But here's what's important. It says, the one who governs perceptions is named Arcandecta. The one who governs reception, Diatharbathas. The one who governs imaginations, Auma. The one who governs integration, Achiaram. And the one who governs impulse, Riaramanacho. The names don't really matter. The important thing to understand is that you have these beings that are creating things like perceptions, receptions, imagination, integration, and impulse. And it continues to go on, and it says the 4 chief demons. All right, so now you have the 4 chief demons. Ephememphi, is associated with pleasure. Yoko is associated with desire. Nenentofni is associated with distress. And Blauman is associated with fear. Out from these four demons come the passions. From distress arises envy and jealousy, grief and vexation, discord, cruelty, worry, and mourning. From pleasure comes much evil and unmerited pride, and so forth. From desire comes anger and fury and bitterness and outrage and dissatisfaction, and so forth. And from fear comes horror, flattery, suffering, and shame. So you have this idea here of these beings, these archonic forces that are creating humanity, and it's creating this human, and it's creating its psychic structure. It's creating its own mental structure. It's creating not only the body or the blueprints for the body, not only the blueprints for the body or the spiritual body, but it is also creating the faculties that humans will have, such as perception, the ability to experience things, reception, the ability to receive concepts, what else was here? I lost my place. Imagination, integration, impulse, okay? But then also come with these things are pleasure and desire and distress and fear. And all of these things give rise to things like envy and jealousy and grief and vexation, discord, cruelty, worry, and mourning. So these are the powers of the archons. These are the archonic forces. And you can see that, according to Gnosticism, the way to liberate oneself from the material world is to achieve gnosis and ultimately defeat the archons. And so defeating the archons can be interpreted as overcoming those forces within yourself. The forces of envy, jealousy, grief, vexation, discord, cruelty, worry, mourning, etc. These are all aspects of humanity that must be overcome, according to Sethian Gnostics. So it just continues a little more, saying this is the total number of the demons, 365. And again, you have 365 corresponding to each day of the year, and then earlier it had the 7 demons that correspond to each day of the week. So really, you can just see how, I think it's been emphasized enough, is that essentially all of the material world, including your body and the structure of your own psyche, is a demonic construct. This is all a trap. Not only your body, but the way that your psyche is constructed. And that's the important thing to understand. It's not just your body, but the construction of your psyche itself that is an archonic, demonic trap that needs to be overcome. And according to the Gnostics, this means achieving gnosis or knowledge or truth of what one really is, and overcoming these faculties created by the archons or arising from the archons. And it says all of Yaldabaoth's servants and his demons worked to finish the psychic body. Remember, this is the psychic body, the body of the psyche. And it says for a very long time it lay inanimate, it did not move. So to skip over some things here, because let's skip over some things in essence. All right, I'll give you a quick summary of what happens. Yaldabaoth's mother, Sophia. Yaldabaoth's mother, Sophia, decides to or wants to undo the work of Yaldabaoth. And so Sophia tricks Yaldabaoth by saying, blow some of your spirit in the man's face, then his body will rise up. So what essentially happens is that Yaldabaoth breathes some of his own light into this being that it created, and then this being starts to become animate, because now it contains light. And so the reason why Sophia ultimately does that is because ultimately the light in darkness will overcome it. meaning that because this spark of light has entered this being, this spark of light contains within it the knowledge of all reality. This is why Yaldabaoth is able to create, because Yaldabaoth contains this light within him. And so even though he hasn't been to the divine realms, he has all the information within his unconscious, so to speak, because it's embedded within the light that he has. So he breathes some of his light into the human that he created, and thus, ultimately, though, this will be the undoing of Yaldabaoth's dark creation, because this means that every single one of us has this spark of light within ourselves, that when we come to knowledge of what we truly are, we will be liberated from the material realm. So this is why Yaldabaoth, or Yaldabaoth's mother, tricks him into giving humanity some of his light, because she knows that ultimately it will be the undoing of his dark creation. On the origin of the world is a little bit different, but very, very similar. It's actually Eve, which is very cool. In that version, Eve is known as Zoe, and it's divine Eve, a spiritual Eve, just like how you have a spiritual Adam. There's a spiritual Eve, and Eve is represented as the force of life. Same kind of idea. She gives this being life, and ultimately is the one who places the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden to try and get humanity to realize what it is. But we won't get into that. We've talked about that. Watch my video on the playlist on the origin of the world for information all about that. Have I been out of focus this whole time? You know what? My camera, I think I have. When I put this microphone too close to the camera, my face goes out of focus. Oh well, my face doesn't need to be in focus to hear this information. So, long story short, okay? Because there's a lot to this. Yaldabaoth's forces envied the man. Through their unified efforts, he had come into being. They had given their power to him. His understanding was far greater than that of those who created him, and greater than the chief ruler himself. When they realized that he shone with light and could think better than they could, and was naked of evil, they took him and cast him down into the lowest depths of the material world. See, we haven't even gotten to matter yet. Basically, they created this psychic version of the being, blew some power into him, and then they realized they fucked up because this being was more powerful than him. Their understanding was far greater than theirs, and he shone with light, and they could think better than they could. So they took him down and cast him into the depths of the material world. And so what they decide to do is begin a series of plans to try and keep humanity tied to the material world. And they do this in many different ways, and this is you hear this about this again and again and again in the Sethian Gnostic texts about Yaldabaoth constantly in this battle to keep humanity in darkness, to keep humanity from understanding what it really is. And this is how they explain the Great Flood. They say the Great Flood wasn't about humanity becoming sinful, but humanity becoming too knowledgeable and realizing what they are. So Yaldabaoth sends a flood to try and kill them all. They end up getting saved, but long story short, Yaldabaoth is now engaged in this battle with humanity, in which humanity is its slaves, but has the power of light within it. And every human has the power to realize what it is, achieve gnosis, and escape the material realm. And so Yaldabaoth is engaged in this battle of keeping humanity in darkness and keeping them as slaves. And this is where the creation of the material body comes in, because they created this psyche version, this spiritual version, and it was still more powerful than them. It was modeled on the realms of divine light. It was still more powerful than them. And so it says this is what they decided to do. It says, Adam was revealed because within him dwelt the shadow of light. His mental abilities were far greater than those of his creators. They had gazed upon him and seen his exalted mental capability. So long story short, he was way smarter than these guys. The host of rulers and archons and demons plotted together, They mixed, see, now we're getting to matter. They mixed fire and earth and water together with four blazing winds. They melded them together in great turbulence. Adam was brought into the shadow of death. They intended to make him anew, this time from earth and water, fire and wind, which are matter, darkness, desire, the artificial spirit. This all became a tomb, a new kind of body. Those thieves bound the man in it, enchained him in forgetfulness, and made him subject to dying. His was the first descent and the first separation, yet the light-filled epinoia within him will elevate his thinking. So, again, they concoct a plan to trap and entomb this being in matter and darkness and desire, and also forgetfulness and dying. Forgets what it really is, forgets what it truly is. And it says this was his first descent and the first separation. This was the first step away from its spiritual essence. Yet the light-filled epinoia within him will elevate his thinking. What is epinoia? Epinoia is purposeful thinking or conceptual thought. So the light-filled epinoia, the power of light, which is the power of thinking, will elevate him and allow him to escape the material realm and ultimately undo the shadowy darkness of Yaldabaoth. So you have this idea that each one of us contains the spark of knowledge and the spark of gnosis within us. And the spark of knowledge and spark of gnosis within us is the way to liberation, according to the Sethian Gnostics. Now, just for a moment, remember we talked about Sethian Gnosticism. I want to talk a little bit about Valentinian Gnosticism because they have a different perspective and it's very interesting. So remember, Sethian Gnosticism looks at the archons as just being pure evil and enslaving humanity, whereas Valentinian Gnosticism looks at the archons as being kind of like rebellious teenagers. They're fighting for power, and they're still shadowy and dark beings, but they're more ignorant than anything else. And one of the divine eonic beings, the Logos, says, hey, you know what? Let's use their powers to create order and structure in the world. And so they create this Logos, this being of light, gives them all a position of status and creates a hierarchy with different subordinates and generals and ranks. And each one is associated with a different aspect of existence, a different aspect of reality, has their own job to do with regard to the material world and everything associated with that lower realm. And then he appoints the chief ruler to rule over them all, which is, of course, the God of the Bible. But again, not looked at as purely evil, but just as beings that lust for power and are ignorant, but are useful in their ordering faculties. Now, what about humanity then? Now, this is really interesting. So listen to this. And if some of this sounds a little dense, that's like, just go with it. I'm just going to read it and then I'll break it down because the Valentinian text is a little dense here, but just go with it. So the eons have brought themselves forth in accord with the third fruit by the freedom of the will and the wisdom with which he favored them for their thought. Let me just make sure this is the right place. We don't really need to. Oh, I'm like, what am I reading here? This does not sound correct. That is not right. We need to get to the creation of humanity, which is right here, the creation of material humanity. All right. So the matter which flows through its form is a cause by which the invisibility which exists through the powers for them all as they beget before them and destroy. The thought which is set between those of the right and those of the left is a power of begetting. So very interesting. In this version, you have the archonic forces that are sort of, there's powers, there's left-sided forces and right-sided forces, and it says that in between these left and right forces is the power of begetting or creating, which is kind of interesting because it sounds very similar to the Hegelian dialectic, where you have thesis and antithesis, and the interaction of thesis and antithesis gives rise to a new creation, a synthesis. In other words, reality is powered by the interaction of opposing forces. Kind of interesting, not exactly the same, but kind of an interesting idea here, where you have the dark forces of the left and the right, and through them, it says the thought which is set between them, so almost like their collaborative effort, is the power of begetting or creating. All those which the first ones will wish to make, so to speak, a projection of theirs, like a shadow cast from and following a body, those things which are the roots of the visible creations, namely the entire preparation of the adornment of the images and representations and likenesses, have come into being because of those who need education and teaching and information, so that the smallness might grow little by little as through a mirror image. For it was this reason that he created mankind at the end, having first prepared and provided for him the things which he had created for his sake. So in this version, you have the creation of humanity that's like a shadow or a mirror of the divine realm. But in this version, it's not entirely, it's not as dark or just a pure state of entrapment, really. This has to do with learning. And it says here, if you read it right here, it says the entire preparation of the adornment of the images and representations and likeness have come into being because of those who need education and teaching and formation, so that it might grow as through a mirror image. So you have this idea of the material realm and material bodies being like a shadow or a mirror image of the material realm that is growing from a smallness. It's growing through education and teaching and formation. So, like that of all else is the creation of mankind as well. The spiritual logos moved him invisibly as he perfected him through the Demiurge and his angelic servants, which shared in the act of fashioning in multitudes when he took counsel with his archons. Like a shadow is earthly man, so that he might be like those who are cut off from the totalities. Also, he is something prepared by all of them, etc., etc., etc. It's this Valentinian text is very dense, but the essential part of it is that the creation of the humanity is helped by the archons. The archons help create humanity, but it's also brought forth by the logos as well. And the logos who was defective brought forth. So there also comes with it is sickness, and because you have this other version of the logos that's called the imperfect logos, and is creating out of harmony with its partner. And because of this creation of out of harmony comes things like sickness and forgetfulness and ignorance. And this is the idea that all the negative aspects that we have, like forgetfulness and sickness, etc., come from the a creation that was created out of harmony. So you see, there's a lot of similarities between Valentinian Gnosticism and Sethian Gnosticism, but some subtleties. Sethian Gnosticism, God and the Archons, outright evil, trapping and imprisoning humanity, creating them as slaves. Valentinian Gnosticism, not so much. It's more like ignorant beings that are useful, that help in the creation of humanity. Negative aspects end up arising. The creation of humanity helps with, by the way, like with education as well. It's education and learning, but a lot of negative aspects enter into the creation because reality is out of harmony. So there's this idea of needing to gain knowledge, gain understanding, gain education, and overcome the aspects of reality that are negative because of the disharmonious nature of existence. So it's more about attaining harmony, attaining knowledge, attaining understanding. And so you can see they're similar. Valentinian Gnosticism and Sethian Gnosticism similar, but subtly different.